Get started here with maybe a little known fact. The Aquatic Committee and Lake Superior Tech Committee submitted 4 projects this year for CSMI inclusion. You heard about 3 of those yesterday. The 4th was to support fish rehabilitation plans that are in place for Lake Superior. And under that activity, we initiated a standardized shoreline electrofishing effort for coasters in Lake Superior. I'm going to talk about a lake-wide effort that about a half a dozen agencies implemented in 2016, and I'm going to focus that down to some effort in Tobin Harbor at Isle Royale that we've been engaged with for a number of years. I want to thank Evan Moon, a new biologist in our office, for helping put this information together. So many of you are aware there's a brook trout rehabilitation plan for Lake Superior. The goal there is to maintain widely distributed self-sustaining populations in as many of the original native habitats as is practical. And the plan outlines some steps to take to evaluate progress toward obtaining this goal. Those are noted here: evidence of increased abundance and range of existing coastal brook trout populations, and then successful reestablishment of new populations in areas where there's suitable habitat. That obviously refers to stocking efforts to help restore populations. So we really haven't gotten at these 2 measures of progress before, so this effort is essentially to help us get started with a baseline of what is our current abundance, what is our current distribution of coasters in Lake Superior, to see if we are having any evidence of increased range or abundance. So the talk about the original native habitats. This is not the best slide, but you can see here in the light pink, essentially dotting around the shoreline, the locations in which coasters were historically present. So this is about 130 sites around the basin, information that was put together by biologists through literature search, agency information around Lake Superior. And then you see in the brighter, larger orange triangles, locations where we have some evidence of current brook trout, coastal brook trout populations. I use that term somewhat loosely. In some areas, I would argue that we're perhaps seeing individuals on a recurring basis, but in terms of a population where you can expect to go there and sample or encounter coasters, probably only about a half a dozen of those on Lake Superior, of which most occur up in that northwest section of the Nipigon Bay area. So we're focusing our efforts in these areas. We've got a brook trout work group that's actively discussing and planning this effort for the Lake Superior Tech Committee. You see the participants listed here from the agencies involved. And what I've got here shown in black ovals are those locations that we are conducting the standardized shoreline electrofishing survey effort. You see they stretch from Nipigon Bay, Royal, the Grand Portage shoreline, the Apostle Islands region where Red Cliff is located, Chequamegon Bay, and then in the Keweenaw and Huron Bay areas of Michigan. The oval circles in green are areas that we have discussed implementing the shoreline effort. If we have enough agency resolve and resources to do that, we'll try and tackle some of these areas as well. So the standardized effort, we've developed a protocol using DC boat electrofishing. We standardized that effort to conductivity and water temperature-based output. Depending on the year, we target generally about a 3 amp output for that effort. We've established fixed sites in these locations. There are 1 kilometer transects. Our sampling effort occurs within 2 meters water depth, right along shore. We have standardized vessel speed, netters, and then we do the work at night in May and June, trying to be as consistent as we can across the locations that we're targeting. We collect standard information, length, weight, possible sex information, check for tagged clips, external marks, sea lamprey, gill parasites, abbreviated gills. So some things that we've observed on brook trout across the the lake. We take a tissue sample for genetic analysis, and then if possible, we tag those fish. We also gather information on non-target individuals while we're doing this. It's a qualitative evaluation, but we're documenting the presence of other species that we encounter during our shoreline effort in these locations. So our objectives, again, are to describe the current status, and we look at relative abundance and size structure, and then distribution of coasters within these locations. Oops. So I've got a few slides here which show some comparison among the various locations around the lake, and then as I mentioned, I'm going to zoom in a bit on Tobin Harbor. So here we've got a relative abundance at the locations identified in the black ovals. You see the range of CPUE from 3.5 down to 0 in several locations. One of the things we're able to look at this year from our 2016 effort, we saw an increase in relative abundance at all locations, with I guess the exception of Red Cliff, which is pretty much even. Huron Bay, there was no effort in 2016, so there was no ability to evaluate that. But we're at least comparing some of our relative abundance information on a standardized basis across locations. I should mention perhaps the distances that are sampled. Tobin Harbor, we're sampling a 17-kilometer area. Schwaming Bay, 7 kilometers. Huron Bay, about 12 kilometers. Grand Portage in the range of 40 kilometers. Nipigon Bay in the range of 50. And then at Red Cliff, 12 kilometers of shoreline. So these are what we're doing on a regular basis. I just wanted to take a quick look at some of the length distribution from these various locations in 2016, and you see some interesting patterns here perhaps. I want to first note the red bars, Grand Portage samples. You'll see it skewed to the lower end of our length range here. In Grand Portage waters, most of the coasters present there are from stocked fish, so they're seeing the evidence of those younger stocked fish. And then as those fish age, they're disappearing for reasons that we're not entirely sure, whether it's survival or moving to other areas. The black bars are from our Tobin Harbor catches in 2016. Tobin Harbor essentially provides a habitat for the entire life cycle. Based on some telemetry work, they tend to remain in that harbor. We see a range of ages from the juveniles through the adults. A nice bell-shaped curve there for that population. And when we look to the Nipigon Bay surveys, obviously they jump out at us as being considerably larger than fish we're encountering in other areas. That's been a trend with coasters in the Nipigon Bay area, that they've been considerably larger than other locations around the lake. We also aren't seeing many fish in that juvenile stage, suggesting that the locations that they're sampling are not juvenile habitat, but primarily adult habitat at this time of year. I mentioned that we're also collecting some non-target information, and we're looking to see how we can utilize this. E.J. Isaac out of the Grand Portage band put this information together for information from their shoreline. Essentially what he's showing here is the percentage of transects or kilometers that are surveyed in which these various species are encountered. We get a little idea of their distribution throughout the survey effort. You see here in yellow bars the non-native species, and in black are native species. So these are species that have been encountered off Grand Portage. We put this together for all of the agencies at each location as well. Now I'm going to move to mine down into the Tobin Harbor information a bit. Similar information here, current status and distribution. We want to look at relative abundance. So we've been at this standardized effort in Tobin Harbor for about 15 years. Though you will notice a gap here from 2012 to 2014. We had some equipment issues. To the tune of a boat sunk in 2012, which limited our effort. And then as we were retooling it, we had some equipment issues in 2013 and 14. So those years are not included, obviously. But over the time period that we've been conducting this spring shoreline effort, we've captured 474 brook trout. We surveyed 204 of those 1 kilometer stations in the harbor. Our CPU has ranged from a low in 2002 to a high in 2007. I should also note here that regulations have changed at Iowa Oil, in part from the information we provided. In 2005, catch and release only regulations were implemented at Iowa Oil. And you can see where that time period falls. I hope some of the slides have been kind of hard to see this morning, but 2005 in this range here. And then there's some other factors that come at play. I'm not implying that regulations were the only thing that took change here. Water levels have begun to come up, improving shoreline spawning habitat for coasters as well. Also want to note that the number of zero catches, where we caught no coasters in a kilometer segment, total has been 35% of those 204, and it's ranged from a high of essentially catching a coaster in 1 kilometer in 2002 to 16 of the 17 kilometer segments in 2011. One of these years we'll hit all 17 of the kilometers, I'm hopeful, and see if that happens. If we look at, zoom in a little at the Tobin Harbor, so this is a little difficult. The harbor is on the inside of the dots here, red dots. We essentially sample from the exterior of the harbor down through it's a 5 kilometer harbor, and then back out to the mouth. We've separated into an inner and outer harbor based on this black line and some of the information there. You see here the blue circles surrounding those stations in which we've had highest CPUE over the time period, and you see the catch per unit effort average at these stations across the time series. High of 5 to a 2.9. The 5 highest kilometers that we're encountering fish in Tobin Harbor, and I'm sure it's not lost on everybody that most of those are in the inner harbor, with one up here at the harbor mouth. So if we look at the size structure, we put this information into 3 time periods, essentially 5-year time blocks, 2001 to 05, 2006 to 2010, and 2011 to 2016, and the graphs on your right. The 2011 to 16, as I mentioned, has fewer years. We did not get it out there in 3 of those years, so less effort in that block of time. Generally, you see a pretty similar pattern here with the length distribution. The length doesn't vary much from the different time periods that we've sampled. The number of fish does change a bit. The lowest number of fish that we encountered was in that first time period, 2001 to 05, and you saw that from the abundance charts as well. We also gather information that mentioned age, sex, condition, clips, and tags. So we've done some scale aging and also developed a length age key from that information the best we can. We know there's challenges with scale aging. We're not killing any of these fish, so odorless are not an option for us, but we gather what information we can. I guess of note is that the oldest fish that we've encountered is a 6-year-old fish, not as old as we might have predicted in some of these coaster populations. This could be a factor of an aging error. We're also looking at sex ratio. Again, this is a challenging effort to take care of in the spring of the year. We're trying to determine whether a fish is male or female based on some of the morphological characteristics. We're seeing a sex ratio of 2 to 1 or 2.5 to 1 females to males. We are able to corroborate some of this information in the fall of the year when we do our gamete collection efforts, occur on about a 5-year cycle. And we do see a higher number of females to males in that effort as well. Look at total length by sex. You see the size range here, slightly larger for the males than the females, generally in that 15 to 20 inch size range. We looked at relative weight of these fish over this time period, all fish pooled. And they've been placed into the cable house length categories here that you see of stock, substock, stock, quality, and preferred. These are based on how the fish compare with world record fish for that species. works out very well for us to do this analysis with coasters in Lake Superior based on the world record brook trout being from the Nipigon River area. So we feel that we're fairly applicable to that gable house analysis. You see here that all size groups fell within the, something I can do? Nope. Oh boy. Is there another way to back this up?
Should work.
The left?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thanks. All right. So all the relative weights fall within the good condition category. You do see a dip here in the larger size fish at the end of the time series. One of the things that we encounter in Tobin Harbor is that gill lice are present in almost 100% of the brook trout we capture that are quality size or larger. And there may be some influence from that gill parasite on these fish as they age. We're looking at clips, as I mentioned, throughout this survey effort. Here you see a number of the clips that have been encountered in Tobin Harbor. So where could these fish be coming from? There's a couple of different stocking efforts. I mentioned Grand Portage. Stocked some fish. We've seen some evidence of fish from Grand Portage. We also did some stocking at Isle Royal in 2000 to 2005 in the Siskiyou Bay area. Those fish were marked, and we did see some movement of those fish into Tobin Harbor. This is just information we're tracking on a lake-wide basis now. We want to dig down a little further to look at within location characteristics. We look at relative abundance by the region of the harbor. You see here that I've broken up the harbor into inner and outer. The red circles show the relative abundance in the inner harbor. The squares, relative abundance in the outer harbor. You see higher relative abundance inshore or inside the harbor, which we saw in that shot of the different segments on the in the bay. So pattern though follows in both cases inner and outer, so it looks like a single population throughout the harbor. If we look at proportion of captures, is something that was a bit interesting to us. We look at the inner harbor, we see that there's 70% of those fish are in the quality and preferred size range in the inner harbor. And it's just the reverse, essentially, in the outer harbor, where we're seeing 65% of those fish in the substock or stock size range, essentially smaller fish in the outer harbor. So we're looking at what are the possible habitat differences between those areas that might influence the distribution of juvenile and adult fish in Tobin Harbor. And I think this is where I'm going to wrap it up for where are we headed with this effort. I mentioned we've standardized the effort. We've identified key locations that we're going to continue to do the work on an annual basis. There are also additional areas we'd like to add to this effort. And so we're hoping there'll be a few more agencies. Minnesota has expressed interest in getting involved. There's interest in the Salmon Trout River shoreline in Michigan, which would be another suitable location to do that work. And I think with that, I can take any questions.